Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton. On the last episode, we talked the Indianapolis Colts and the Tennessee Titans in terms of their draft, kind of breaking down the players that they selected. In this episode, we will be talking about the other two teams in the division. That would be the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans in their draft, and kind of breaking that down and, giving you a little bit further insight into the players that they drafted. We're going to get into that and more in this episode. However, up first, we will have the Get It Off Your Chest segment. Now, the Get It Off Your Chest segment in this episode will be focused on, it can be focused on anything, but in this episode, it's going to be focused on a particular gentleman who plays for the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, they were eliminated in Game 6 by the Indianapolis Pacers on Thursday night. However, one guy particularly thought he was the show in the locker room. Here, I'm going to kind of bring you into what happened. Check this video out.
Here.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Before I finish.
Yeah.
You subscribe to my pod?
Do I subscribe to you? I do not subscribe.
So you can't interview me then. No
Okay,
disrespect.
Well, Jamal is here.
You subscribe? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Again, there were a couple times within a bucket or two. In previous games, y'all have been able to kind of get over that hump, or maybe.
Mic on my face, please? Yeah, thanks.
Was it anything they did in particular, or was it just one of those where the bucket didn't go down, there wasn't the stop, they made one? What kind of prevented that you all from being able to get over, kind of like you have in the past?
You'll move that mic, please, or just get out the circle, please, for me, please, ma'am. If you're not subscribed to my pod, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, if you don't know this, that's just blatant disrespect. I mean, honestly, a reporter is there to do her job, his or her job, whoever's there. But for you to ask her if she subscribed to your podcast, and if she doesn't, then you can't interview him. It's just borderline weird. First of all, not everyone keeps up with everyone's personal life in the NBA and what they do on their off time, which is what your podcast is. Secondly, for you to think that you're such a big deal that you cannot be interviewed because she doesn't subscribe to your podcast is just crazy. She is there to do a job. Now, forgive me, I don't remember I don't know the reporter's name at this current time, but that doesn't matter. What matters is the disrespect that was shown here. Come on, Patrick Beverley. I know you're an NBA player. I know that you have done some eccentric things over your career in terms of how you react on the court sometimes. I mean, who can forget you jumping on the scorer's table and celebrating and crying when the Minnesota Timberwolves won a play-in game a couple years back? Yeah, no one's going to forget that. I mean, you celebrated like it was the Super Bowl. But to this level of disrespect for someone that's just trying to do their job, has not disrespected you and is trying to do their job, is just uncalled for. It's silly, and it's very, very stupid. So, honestly, I have no words for just this foolishness. This is just stupid. Very, very stupid. And to be someone that's a grown man, presumably in his 30s, I mean, you acted like a little child in this situation because someone wasn't subscribed to your podcast. Do I really go to people? I mean, honestly, do I go to people and I cut them off or any of those type of things because they're not subscribed to my podcast, but they want to interview me or anything like that or ask me questions? No, I don't. I answer the questions. I'm a professional, and I go forward from there. To me, it's very unprofessional, very silly, very stupid, and, unfortunately, kind of a little on brand for some of the things that Patrick Beverley has done over his career. It is what it is. That's the Get Off Your Chest segment for this episode. Kind of wanted to get that off my chest because I replayed it and I was like, am I watching a reality series? Is he doing something that is he doing this for a joke effect? But no, he actually literally told her she couldn't interview him. Pushed the mic out of his way, and then the mic wasn't really all in his face to begin with. And then told her, hey, she kind of get out of the circle. Really? And secondly, you don't even know if any of the other people that are in the circle are even subscribers to your podcast. Do you even know any of the people that were in your circle? You probably know some of the reporters, of course, obviously, but come on, guy. Just silly and stupid on all fronts. That's the Get Off Your Chest segment for this episode. Of course, like I mentioned, definitely want to talk about this episode. This episode is going to be kind of on the other two teams in the division. That would be the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans, and kind of breaking down their drafts and, breaking down their players. But I did a question here from Walk Down Willie before we get started. Of course, Tyler Boyd to the Titans, thoughts? Okay, well, for those that aren't aware, veteran wide receiver Tyler Boyd, Cincinnati Bengals, came to visit the Tennessee Titans after he visited out in LA. I believe it through the Rams or Chargers, can't remember. But basically, there's reports out there that they're working on a deal or agreeing to a deal, and we'll see what happens. But if the deal is agreed to and done, definitely a great addition to that offense. Gives them a proven slot guy and a guy that has history with Coach Callahan for the Tennessee Titans. So it'll be interesting just to see if that happens, that dynamic that's added, and definitely be an upgrade at the slot position for them. But of course, I did mention that we'll get off onto what the show is actually about this episode, and that would be the other two teams in the division. The Jacksonville Jaguars are the first team I'm going to start with on this episode. Now, we're going to start with their first pick. We'll go from there. Brian Thomas Jr., they picked him 23rd overall, 6'3", 209. He definitely is going to be a guy starter. They had to draft someone there to replace Calvin Ridley, who left for the Tennessee Titans. So not exactly bad to pick a guy like this. He has speed and he's shifty. If you don't know, if I'm watching his tape, he definitely can catch the ball and has speed, but he's definitely shifty and can make a few people miss, which is great for a guy his size as well. He can line up in the slot and kind of line up outside as well, and he makes contested catches, which is huge for a wide receiver, especially with building a bond with a quarterback. Trevor Lawrence definitely will benefit from that in terms of being able to put balls in places that are not exactly perfect, but Thomas coming up with the catch potentially. Now, of course, there are weaknesses to go along with any player. The releases on the intermediate routes, he kind of rounds off with a few routes. I noticed that, which of course, that's not that big in college, but in pros, you definitely have to be a little bit more efficient with your routes and not rounding them off. The digs and stuff like that. And he needs to be better in that technique. And then the technique, not sure how he react to press coverage. I didn't see a ton of press coverage that was played upon him. Of course, he's going to see that a little bit more in the NFL. It's going to be interesting to see how he kind of develops that, the swim moves, things like that, to kind of get off the line of scrimmage and keep the route in sync with what the quarterback wants to do, and get open, of course, because of course if a defensive back gets his hands on you, say a Darius Sneed Jr. or a L'Jarius Sneed, he can definitely disrupt the route and throw the quarterback and the timing off the receiver. So it'll be interesting there just to kind of check that out, see what happens. Moving on to the next pick, another LSU Tiger. Of course, Brian Thomas Jr. was a wide receiver at LSU, along with Malik Neighbors. But the next guy is Mason Smith, defensive tackle. Of course, like I mentioned, from LSU. I'm not sure if he's going to be a starter this year or not. He's definitely going to contribute, of course. He's 6'5", 315, and he can make some things happen and move some furniture. So, yeah, definitely he's going to be a guy that is going to factor in the rotation, if not be a starter eventually. I would say more than likely next year. Definitely someone who can rush the passer in the interior, swim moves, things like that. He's definitely got that on down pat. He's quick off the ball, which is, for a man his size, is excellent, and it can cause a lot of problems for the centers and guards that he will be seeing, or maybe some tackles on some stunts, things like that. Definitely can split doubles, which is huge. You want a guy that can take on doubles in there. Do I think he'll see them off top of first? No, he probably won't. But as his career goes on, he's capable of taking on those double teams and still being effective, whether it be stuffing them at them or splitting them if it comes to a pass rush situation. Also, he can be definitely. I will say, we do have some weaknesses though. Doesn't really use a power rush for as big as he is, which the bull rush and things like that. But T'Vondre Sweat. Now, he didn't use that as much either, but of course, coming out, listening to him or hearing the information about him, he didn't really use the bull rush because he was bored. Maybe Mason Smith was trying to perfect all those different things as well. He definitely is a big guy, can do some things. His pad level, though, that's one thing I do take a look at. It does kind of get high. It's like he pops up and boom, he's trying to do his thing. Now, you can't necessarily be high all the time, especially when you're going against the guards and the centers, because in the NFL they're going to get their hands into your chest, and that's not good because they're going to stunt all your momentum at that point. So that's my thoughts on Mason Smith. Round 3, 96th overall. The Jaguars took Jerry Jones, cornerback, Florida State. He's 6 foot, 190 pounds, 4.38 speed. He basically is going to compete for that starting job at the outside cornerback position. Now, I have some strengths and I have some weaknesses for him, so kind of hang tight with me. Physical in the slot. He has good hands. I mean, of course, a magnet for the football, which is always good for a defensive player. Basically either, chasing down the tackle or just kind of reading, reacting, and figuring things out. He's a good blitzer and has the ability to play outside. But here's where my questions come about. You saw him play outside, but did you see him play outside exclusively? That's one thing I wonder. He can be, out of position. Notice, a little bit of a technique issue. Guys getting behind him with a guy at 4.38 speed. That's a little bit more of a technique issue, in my opinion. If the guys are getting behind you, catch up. But, guys getting behind you is kind of a big thing, especially with an outside corner. Seems to be a physical player, but, his coverage is, I will say his coverage is can be iffy at times on the outside, in my opinion. Of course, he definitely can step on the field and prove me wrong, but, definitely it's going to be interesting just to kind of watch and see how he develops, because, of course, he was drafted to be an outside corner for the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is an interesting situation because they did sign Darnell Savage. They signed him to be the slot guy. So, and he's been primarily a safety at the NFL level. So it's just going to be interesting. It's kind of like, you're trying new pieces in new places. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops in that defense there as well. So that's just, a few thoughts that I had. Of course, 4th round, Javon Foster, offensive tackle, Missouri. You can't fail with getting more depth at the offensive line. I mean, you have Walker Little there, and of course, he could be gone after this year. You have Cam Robinson, Anton Harrison as well. You have some guys there that can play the offensive tackle position, but you always need depth. Injuries, things like that. He's definitely a good run blocking offensive tackle. He definitely gets his hands on people, drives people. And finishes the play, which is good. He definitely, it's a guy that he understands run blocking concepts, I should say. Where of course you have your pairings with the guard and the tackle, and you could have your different blocks there. You have your pulls, your things like that. He does well in terms of kind of marrying himself with the scheme and what else going on. Getting to the next level, getting on the linebackers as well, positioning himself, not necessarily trying to bury the guy, but getting in position to help his running back get up the field, which he did that very well at Missouri, especially this past year. Weaknesses, I would say for him, needs technique works on pass blocking. Now, for a big guy, he's definitely going to need that. I mean, you would think he would be pretty solid at that, but maybe a little bit more footwork cleanup and a little bit more hand placement in terms of, trying to, hand placement on the inside, outside, those different things as well. It's going to be interesting just to see how he's able to develop there in that aspect. And he kind of chases defenders often. That's where I was kind of getting into in his past, and he chases them a little bit instead of kind of your patience and then punching with your hands. That's the biggest thing you need. You don't necessarily need to chase a pass rusher because that can definitely get you in trouble. An overzealous offensive lineman can definitely get you looking silly out there, especially with a veteran pass rusher as well. So that'll be an interesting thing to keep up with. Another fourth-round pick, Jordan Jefferson, defensive tackle, again from LSU. This is their third pick from LSU, by the way. Strengths, he saw flashes of his quickness and his ability to shed blocks. So that's an interesting thing there. It'll be interesting just to see how he's able to kind of maneuver at the NFL level and bring that to the NFL level. But one thing I did see a lot, just in terms of the weaknesses, he got washed out a lot and wasn't consistent with his power or quickness, meaning he's just sitting on the block. Didn't seem like he was a guy that gave you the full effort all the time. Now, I could be wrong there, and of course, he has every chance to prove me wrong and of what I saw. But it just seemed like to me the consistent quickness used and the consistent use of power wasn't always there. So it'll be just interesting just to see how they're able to bring that out of him in Jacksonville, or if they're not, or if he does make the rotation or not, or make the practice squad. Just depends, in my opinion. Fifth round pick, 153rd overall, DeAndre Prince, cornerback, Mississippi. Now, here's what I will say about that. I do like his game. He diagnoses and accelerates to close the gap on the run and pass. Definitely a physical tackler. So I definitely like his ability in terms of coverage. He definitely plays his angles, plays different things, plays his angles and things like that. Inside technique, outside technique, does that well. Kind of stays up under the deep pattern. Doesn't get lost in those things and spin around or any of those things. But I will say the only big thing is, of course, his initial alignment. That might be something he's got to work on. But hey, I'm getting into like super technical things, so no worries. But I think he'll definitely be a guy that he trusts his ability, but sometimes he trusts his ability just a little too much. Now, what I mean by that is he trusts that he's got good ability, but he sometimes tries to bait people into things, which I understand that and I get it. But, sometimes you can get yourself in trouble if you try to do that just a little too much. Go in there with that one. But overall, I think he's going to be a solid corner. I think that's a guy to watch out for as a potential player for the Jacksonville Jaguars this year and factoring into that cornerback rotation, if not a guy out there. So we'll see what happens. I could be wrong, of course, but we'll see what happens. Fifth round, 167th overall, the Jaguars take Keelan Robinson, running back out of Texas. His strength is he kind of can, he can return kicks, can line up at the wide receiver as well, has good hands. He does a few things there, which, he does have a toolkit of different things he can do, which is very, very good for Jacksonville in terms of replacing Jamal Agnew. So, definitely a guy that can step in and do some of the things that he does. He's not one to run the football a ton, though. So that's not necessarily something they're going to ask of him with Travis Etienne back there. So, I don't necessarily see that something as being a bad thing for him. And of course, he's got to be more than just a special teams guy in terms of, for what all they like to do, with throwing Jamal Agnew in there and things like that, especially with Calvin Ridley gone and then Brian Thomas there as a rookie as well. You could see more of him being added. Let's see. The next pick we got, sixth round, Cam Little, kicker, Arkansas. I mean, honestly, I really don't have a whole tape of a kicker and how, no offense to any special teams guys, whether it be kickers, punters, things like that. I mean, they deemed he was worthy enough to draft and they cut Joey Sly. So, hey, he must be very good. So we'll see what happens there. And hopefully he doesn't catch any of the yips or anything of that nature because, Lord have mercy. We've had the kicker that was selected very high, and he got a case of the yips. But I'm not trying to wish any of that on him at all. I just, just saying, hey, you draft a kicker, we'll see what happens in terms of that and his transfer over to the NFL. And last but certainly not least, we've got Miles Cole, defensive end, Texas Tech. His strengths is he's a change of direction, and he's got energy. He reads his keys very, very well in order to, be in the plays. But I will say he doesn't do anything necessarily extraordinary. I didn't quite see the speed pop out on tape. However, I could be wrong there, but I just didn't see it pop out on tape. And he doesn't do anything exactly extraordinary, but he does just basically do things to he makes winning plays in terms of being in the right spot in the right time. I'll give him that. As far as the Jacksonville Jaguars draft, it was cool. You had some good players picked, you had your Brian Thomas, your Mason Smith. I'm just interested to see how the Jerry Jones and the DeAndre Prince picks pan out. Jordan Jefferson wasn't quite, the tape wasn't necessarily the most impressive to me, but, of course, it could have been the tape I watched. But, hey, it just is what it is. Javon Foster, good depth. And Kellen Robinson, probably not a guy that's going to get a lot of playing time in terms of, being a guy in the running back room. But, he could make a mark, special teams and, gadget plays, things like that. It'd just be interesting overall to see how this draft class pans out and goes from there. But, of course, we're going to talk the team that won the division last year. That would be the Houston Texans. We're going to do that. But first, we're going to take a quick commercial break on Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton.
EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash are two of the best beard grooming products for men worldwide. They help promote growth, keep your beard moisturized and soft, and enhance your overall upkeep of your facial hair. And with the new promo code MPAFC10, you can get 10% off on these products. Just go to www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. Again, that's www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. And again, the promo code MPAFC10. Again, MPAFC10, where you can get 10% off any products except for beard boxes. So treat your beard better today by going to get this the EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash.
All righty. Thank you all for coming back. We're going to talk Houston Texans, but first I want to say thank you to EBO Beard Butter. I don't know if you can kind of see it with the little background, but anyway, I've got EBO Beard Butter in hand right there. I use it pretty much every day. Thank you for being a sponsor of Touring the AFC South. Let me go ahead and flash that across the bottom right there of the screen for those that are watching. There we go. All right. And like I mentioned, up next, we will be talking about the AFC South reigning champions, division champions, the Houston Texans. Now, of course, they came into this without a first-round draft pick. If you don't remember from last year, they traded that pick to bring in Will Anderson Jr., getting the second pick, C.J. Stroud, the third pick, Will Anderson Jr., and back-to-back picks. So they started off this draft in the second round. They sat out the whole first day. Of course, they could have jumped into it, of course, but they did not jump into it at all. They stayed in the second round, 42nd overall pick, Kamari Lassiter, cornerback, Georgia, 6 foot, 180 pounds. I will say he's a physical corner, can come up and tackle, and definitely supports the run game, and is definitely a guy that, you definitely has some speed on him, and he's definitely a potential starter. If you don't know, they took they had basically a one-year deals for C.J. Henderson and Jeff Okudah, who are both former first-round picks and both on their third team. So, in my opinion, this pick right here with Kamari Lassiter, he could be a potential starter for them, especially just considering all the things around him. I will say that he definitely is a physical guy, but he is kind of the weakness, kind of handsy at times. times in coverage. That's a thing to look at because, of course, the 5 yard, thing where you can actually you can basically put hands on wide receivers in the 5 yards, but after that, you got to rely on those skills in the coverage. So we'll see what happens there, and then of course, he can sometimes be turned around in pass coverage, which that's not good in the NFL. You don't want to be spinning around on top, I should say, by guys like Michael Pittman Jr. or DeAndre Hopkins or maybe a Christian Kirk. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on and watch as well for him. But, he comes in and has a good camp. He could potentially find himself being the starter at cornerback for the Houston Texans. Now, second round, 59th overall, they did have 2 second-round picks, by the way. Second round, 59th overall, Blake Fisher, offensive tackle, Notre Dame. Strengths, he's solid in the run game. He's the guy that was opposite of Joe Alt, by the way, who was a pick by the the Los Angeles Chargers. I keep wanting to put them back in San Diego. But the Los Angeles Chargers with the 5th overall pick. But Blake Fisher, he's 6'6", 310 pounds. He's solid in the run game and pass blocking, and he picks up blitz as well, which is a very, very good thing. Definitely coming into the NFL. The weaknesses, he can be susceptible to power sometimes. Power rushes can get to him from time to time, and he's got to be a little stronger at the point of attack. Essentially, that's something to kind of keep an eye on, to watch for, and see what happens there when it comes to him. More than likely, he's going to be a swing tackle for them. So, any of their tackles got hurt, which did happen last year, he could jump in and kind of handle some things. Or, they more than likely going to pick up a veteran. Because one thing you did notice about the Houston Texans last year, they did load up with offensive linemen, and it would not surprise me if they do so again. Got to protect the franchise at all costs, and that's C.J. Stroud. Third round, 78th overall, you got Kalen Bullock, safety, USC, 6'3", 190 pounds. Strengths, he's a physical player. He can cover a lot of ground, which that's good, and he's a guy that can kind of grow potentially to replace Jimmy Ward at safety, which, for those that aren't aware, Jimmy Ward came over last offseason at safety from the 49ers. He was, kind of injured, which he's had injury history throughout his entire career. So if he's injured, Kalen Bullock could potentially slide in. However, I will say Bullock, it's going to be just interesting just to see how he develops in terms of playing the safety position, playing the middle of the field, if he can cover a lot of ground or if he's going to be near the line of scrimmage. It'll be just interesting just to see what all he can do. And he's, if he's in the box, can he make those tackles and be physical and wrap up on those tackles? That's something I noticed as well. So it'll just be interesting just to see that part of things for him. But he's potential rotational safety for this season, in my opinion. And then you have the 4th round, Cade Stover, 123rd overall, tight end from Ohio State. Now, there is the familiarity there with C.J. Stroud. Of course, they did play together at Ohio State. So it'll be interesting there. He makes contested catches. He finds holes in defense. Now, when the play breaks down, quarterback needs somebody to hit with a pass. He's always the guy because he always finds holes in the defense, which is good for, a young quarterback as well. I mean, of course, more than likely he's going to be the second or third tight. He's going to be a third tight end more than likely because you have Brevin Jordan and you have Dalton Schultz there. But he still is a guy that can kind of factor in just because he just knows how to get open. One thing, he definitely can make people miss in the open field. I noticed that he had that type of ability. I don't know how that will translate necessarily to the NFL, but he's 6'4", 251 pounds. He's a big man. And for him to make people kind of miss or make the first big person miss would be something that would add to their tight end room as well. Of course, another guy that can make people miss, Brevin Jordan definitely can make people miss. Let's see. And then definitely one thing I noticed is he threatened the seam a lot. So he runs a lot of seam patterns. He ran a lot of seam patterns in college. I'm wondering if that'll translate over to the NFL, but he's not a guy that's afraid to go across the middle in the seam pattern. So it'll be interesting just to see how that transitions and if he's able to kind of get that there. But of course, like I mentioned, he's not the fastest. So, it'll be interesting there. And then inline blocking, I didn't see a ton of that. So, it'll be interesting to see if they use him there as a tight end or if they kind of spread him out. So it'd be just interesting to see if he can do the inline blocking. No or yes, and we'll see what happens from there. Sixth round, 188th pick, Jamal Hill, linebacker, Oregon. Strengths. He's closing speed. He has closing speed. He's 6 foot, 226 pounds. He has great closing speed. He's a read and react guy, and he blitzes well, and he's physical. Now some of the weaknesses, size. I mean, he's 6 foot tall, 226 pounds, a linebacker. Not necessarily the tallest guy, but we've seen plenty other linebackers be that size and do well in the NFL. And just questions about taking on blocks. You didn't really see a lot of taking on blocks. You're going to see a lot of maybe running around, which I understand you can do that in the NFL. However, you got to be able to take on some of the blocks too, because you're not going to be able to run around all of them. Just is what it is. Sixth round, 205th overall, another sixth round pick for them. Jawar Jordan, I'm sorry. Running back, Louisville, 5'10", 185 pounds. He's a one cut and go guy, which basically fits that offense to a T because, of course, that offense coordinator, Bobby Slowick, came from the San Francisco 49ers, who run an offense basically just one cut and go. So definitely fits well in that aspect. Reads blocks well and presses the line of scrimmage, which that's huge. That's a guy that you definitely can count on to do what he needs to do. Not going to be necessarily knocked backward. Even though he's a small guy, he's not going to necessarily be knocked backwards, but he's going to find a way to get you at least a couple yards. Weaknesses, he's kind of slighter frame, like I mentioned. He's not a big guy. He's not necessarily a guy that's been shown to be a receiving threat. That's not necessarily a huge thing for the Houston Texans. However, screen passes, running routes out of the, swing patterns, things like that, option routes. It's going to be interesting to see how he develops there and shows off that he does have hands. I just didn't see it on tape. That was the thing. Okay, round 7, 238th overall. Solomon Byrd, defensive end, USC, 6'3", 250 pounds. Strengths, presses the edge, discipline in his pass rush, from what I noticed. And he consistently, when he gets there, he strips the football, which for Houston Texans, that's what they love to see. They love to see a guy that's going to get to the quarterback. If you look at just how they kind of modeling this defense, look at all the people up front. You had Daniil Hunter, you have Will Anderson Jr., you have Danico Autry. I mean, you have all these different guys up front that can get to the quarterback and make things happen. So why not add another guy? Weakness, can he put his hand on the ground and rush? He kind of was more of a stand-up guy. And the hand placement could possibly be better because you can see him getting pushed out of there as well, potentially, in terms of, rushing the passer or, against the run. Yeah, honestly, going back to Jawar Jordan and Jamal Hill, Hill, I can see him as either a practice squad or a backup guy. Jordan, backup, let's see, and Solomon Byrd, maybe more of a practice squad guy, perhaps at this point. We'll see what happens. He could work his way into being a rotational guy as well. So you never know. Of course, the other seventh round pick, Marcus Harris, defensive tackle of Auburn. Basically takes on double teams. He's going to have a good chance to potentially make this roster just because defensive tackle depth. They need that. So definitely would be a guy that has potential to be a rotational guy. He can split double teams, doesn't give up on plays either. So definitely the plays opposite him, you can see him hauling behind to try to make that play from the opposite side of the field, which is huge because that fits what D'Amico Ryans wants from his defense, to be relentless, to be hustling, to be always ready to make that play. Of course, weaknesses, he doesn't use his hands well, in my opinion. It could be better there. Hand-to-hand combat, swim moves, things like that to kind of get himself through there and just burst off the ball. Got to be a little quicker there now. Of course, he's working with D'Amico Ryans and that defense, and he's going to have some veterans around him. So those are things that could definitely help him, maybe in the stance, things like that. Maybe using his hands to kind of divert the issue of, the quickness and things like that off the ball. And the last pick for the Houston Texans, 249th overall, Darius Henderson, offensive lineman, Michigan. You can never have enough offensive linemen. He can actually do the reach block and pick up that the twist up front pretty well. He's just a solid guy. Doesn't necessarily stand out. Of course, like all young players, he's got to work on the hand placement in terms of blocking, and things like that. In terms of your end rushers and all those different things. So we'll see what happens when it comes to him. Definitely not necessarily a guy that can say they can depend on him. No, not necessarily a guy that can say they depend on. All right, now I've gone through all 4 AFC South teams. Part 1, of course, if you didn't catch that, that was the last episode going over the Titans and the Colts draft. This episode went over the Jaguars and the Texans draft. I'm going to rate these drafts for each team, just put them in order of what I think they are. But first, we're going to take a quick commercial break on Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton.
A shift. A shift is something that happens and changes the dynamics. And that's what happened when Garrett Logistics was born. After 10 years as a sales pro in the logistics world of sporting goods, John Garrett decided to pivot to the world of freight and start a brokerage. So you're saying to yourself, why trust Garrett Logistics? Well, Garrett Logistics helps shippers improve overall workflow, along with increased on-time pickup and delivery percentages. Last-minute loads, multi-drop pickups, and more are part of the services with Garrett Logistics. They're available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., all times Central Standard Time. So give them a ring at 615-400-8484. That's 615-400-8484, or you can email them at john@garrettlogistics.co or visit their website at garrettlogistics.co. Garrett Logistics, where the motto is, it's not just freight to us, it's your business.
All right, and we are back. And like I mentioned before, we're going to rate these drafts, who had the best draft in the division. Now, of course, some people will love what I said. Some people will hate what I said. Excuse me, as I'm looking for my notes here. All right, and some people will like it. Some people will hate it. It is what it is, and there you go. But to me, the best draft in the division, the Titans. I mean, here's why I say the Titans. The Titans, the reason why I say the Titans is, of course, they had the first 3 picks, all potential starters. The 5th round pick they had is potentially a depth guy in the slot to kind of grow to eventually be a guy that could potentially step in and be a starter. You've got a 6th round pick, a guy fills a hole, punt return, things like that. Could be a factor in the slot, provided if they do pick up and officially sign Boyd from Tyler Boyd from the Bengals. If that's the case, then he's not going to factor into that spot in terms of the slot. But if they don't sign him, of course, he would probably factor in that competition. Of course, James Williams, the potential pick, and kind of foretelling to the future, and then Harrell as an edge rusher for the from Michigan. That was my first overall pick for the draft. I would say the second one, I'm going to go with the Houston Texans. I do like their draft. I mean, you got a potential starter at 1. You got Blake Fisher fills a swing tackle need. You've got Cade Stover. Of course, he can factor in the passing game and potentially be a guy that's going to help you there. Other than that, you've got some other guys that may more like backups and rotational guys. But you have 3 guys that can actually factor into what they can do for this year. As far as the next one, I'm going to put the Colts at 3rd. I do like the pick of Latu Latu. I definitely love that pick. Definitely like some of their picks. I just think some of the picks were kind of a little questionable. Looking at them overall, not sure the impact they're going to have. And the fact that they waited so long to pick up a cornerback, which was a need for them, and they never really kind of addressed it until like the 5th or 6th round, that kind of concerns me. And it was a main need for them. Now, I understand you trusting your room. However, the cornerback from Marshall is solid. And he has potential to grow into something, but you still needed help in that. And you did not address that need. That was huge for me that I did not like that part of it. Now, 4th, I will put the Jacksonville Jaguars draft as the last in the division. Now, I do like the pick of Brian Thomas. And there's all the things I love about the drafts of every single team. So I'm not saying their drafts are just horrible. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just ranking them and the things that I think about, the things that I'm looking at. Now, Thomas Jr. will be a starter. I think eventually Mason Smith will be a starter on that line. Jerry Jones, I'm still kind of questionable on that one because, I saw him play more in the slot and I liked him in the slot. However, now they're bringing him in to be an outside corner and then they're moving Darnell Savage into the slot. It just seems like it's a lot they're counting on. I get it with the Titans. They're counting on J.C. Latham to switch from right tackle to left tackle. And I get that. But they're not necessarily counting on a couple different places, whether it be free agency and through the draft to do something there in terms of, switching positions and all those different things. No. It just seems like they're doing a little too much there, in my opinion. That's just my thoughts. I think that Prince will definitely shine down there. And there's a couple picks just seems like they were kind of like not necessarily picks that were kind of wasted. Wasn't necessarily high on the Jordan Jefferson pickup from LSU. To me, just it didn't really show a lot with his film. Kenneth Robinson, okay, cool, I get it. He's a new speed guy. Miles Cole, I'm sorry, from Texas Tech. I get that one too. But overall, like I mentioned again, this is my order of who I think did the best in the draft. I got the Titans 1, Texans 2. I've got the Colts at 3 and the Jaguars at 4. Now, I will say that's not saying that all of their drafts were horrible. No, that's not saying that. It's just saying the way I ranked them. Now, of course, there will be people that will agree or disagree. It is what it is. Hey, we'll just, 2 or 3 years, we'll be able to tell exactly what all these drafts look like and who did what and who went where and who didn't do this and who did do this. And of course, this, again, is just an opinion. But, that is the end of the show. I want to thank everyone for coming on. Of course, my name is Mike Patton. I am the host of Touring the AFC South. You can find me on all listening platforms. Touring the AFC South, on all listening platforms, whether it be Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, you name it, we are there. And we're also on YouTube where you can actually visually see the show. And of course, you can find me on social media at the artist formerly known as Twitter. You can find me at Mike Patton 82. That's MikePatton 82 on Instagram and Threads. You can find me there at the THA, not THE _general_MP. I want to thank you all again for tuning in to this episode, giving you a little bit of the 411 information on the drafts of each team in the AFC South. Stay tuned next week. We'll be back. Peace.